Hey guys, so today we're going to be talking about a more serious topic, which is why this video is going to be more serious. And I usually don't like to bring these videos up too often, but I feel like it's important to talk about. And when something's important to talk about, it's not just for my own benefit, it's for a benefit of other people. It's just something that I've been going through these past couple years, and it's a topic that keeps on appearing in my life, and that's loss. And we all go through it, and it takes a lot of different forms. It could be a loss of a job, a loss of friendships or a relationship with someone. It could be a loss of possessions or your homes. And I feel like the one we go to first is loss of life. And it's very hard to go through those things because it involves suffering, a sense of, I wish life was this way and not this totally awful situation that I'm put in. And I feel like a lot of people, myself included before, have tried to go through these situations and try to fix it on our own. And we try to say, oh, okay, what if I do this in this situation? Then I'll be completely fine and I'll be okay if this happens. But what if that doesn't happen? And you try to make up an excuse, and we go into these things and bouts of like, okay, this didn't happen, so I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to do that. And we get to the point where we hit rock bottom. And we see that our situation has gotten a whole lot worse than it was. And us making the choice to continue down that path and say, no, we're in control when we're absolutely not in control, just shows how broken we as humans are and how imperfect we are. That's why I believe that we can't go through life without Christ. And as a growing Christian and me growing up in the church, I used to say, oh yeah, I'm good with God and everything like that. But when life hits you with different things and you're not prepared and you're not ready for those situations, it's a whole lot different thing to just say something and say, oh yeah, I believe that. And then actually when it hits you, it changes your perspective on things. And a lot of people and the people in the world, they're going to think life is over when these moments happen and that there's no coming back from it. And you poured yourself all into this one thing and there's no hope for you anymore. But in fact, there is. It's never too late. And that's why Christ is the only way. Because we can continue to build our own lives and try to say, oh, I'm going to do this in 10 years. This is how my life is going to look like. But what if it doesn't look that way? What then are you going to do? And what then are we going to try to focus on? Are we going to try to go back to what our life should look like or what we want it to look like? Or we're going to have to meet reality and say, hey, maybe this wasn't the best choice to make, and maybe this isn't what my life is going to look like. And that kind of just relinquishes control, or we let go of control of our lives. And I feel like that's the only way to walk through life, because when it comes down to it, we aren't really in control. We may want to be in control, and we try to push for these certain things so hard, but we're not in control of what will happen. We are not omniscient. We aren't all-knowing. We aren't perfect human beings. We are very sinful, and we are very imperfect. And so, when we struggle with these different things, there's only one way that we can go to, and that is to let go and say, Lord, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to trust you in these moments. And when that suffering hits, We can either wallow in our sorrow and make these certain things, say, oh yeah, I'm gonna blame this person, or I'm going to blame this effect of what happened to me, or something like that. And sometimes we even blame God for it. But He let those things happen in our life, and everyone goes through suffering at one point. And letting those things happen in our life show us how much we need Him. And I feel like that's the most important thing, the most important lesson that I continue to struggle with, and to learn and realize that I'm a sinner. I'm constantly in the wrong place, but I have a God who is much more powerful than these moments of loss. And He is the only one that can save me. And so I need that constant reminder. Once you get it once, you're not like, oh yeah, all right, Jesus all the way. Because life, you can know these different principles, but when the moment hits that you're not in control and these things spiral and become more real, we don't know what to do. So, with that all to say, I'm going to be talking about Job. And I know a lot of people know the story of Job, but those of you who don't, I'm going to give a quick summary and then read this last little section of Job. So Job is about a man who he lost everything. He lost his possessions, his home, his livelihood. And going back and rewinding a little bit, the story begins where Satan is looking down, and it even says that he walked all around the world looking at man. And he was looking for one faithful person to God. And he said he couldn't find him. But God said, I know of a man who is extremely faithful to me. I'm paraphrasing, so I encourage you guys to read the book of Job, because it's really fascinating and really powerful to read. And he said, you can take away all these things from him. His home, his possessions, his life, and livelihood. Not his life, but his livelihood. And there was one rule, though, that Satan couldn't touch Job. And so Satan takes away all these things from him. And he loses his farm, his livestock, his children, and what makes matters worse is his wife tells him to curse God. And he says he can't do that. He's not going to do that. Because he still believes in God's holiness and that he has a purpose in all this. And his friends come up and tell him that God must have cursed him because of all that he did in his life, and that he must have done something to upset him. But in truth, it was all part of God's plan to show how faithful he was. And he even has these bouts of praying and asking God why. And that's something that I used to think that that's a terrible thing to do. But asking God questions of not of anger, but out of being genuine and asking him to provide and help you through these moments, that's not a bad thing at all. Because we can still be sinful, but our hearts, when we're devoted to Christ, can be in the right place, and that's looking to him for help and looking for him to provide, and not really questioning who he is, but wondering why we had to go through these things. And that's a part of grief. It's a part of mourning. And so he goes through all these things, and it kind of dampers his relationships with his friends. And when it comes down to it, Job, he looks at God and still sees him as God. And really, he trusts in him through everything. And at the end of the story, in Job 42, verse 10, it says, "And the Lord restored the fortunes of Job, when he had prayed for his friends, and the Lord gave Job twice as much as he had before. Then came to him all his brothers and sisters, and all who had known him before, and ate bread with him in his house. They showed him sympathy and comforted him for all the evil that the Lord had brought upon him. And each of them gave him a piece of money and a ring of gold. And the Lord blessed the latter days of Job more than his beginning. And he had 14,000 sheep, 6,000 camels, 1,000 yoke of oxen, and 1,000 female donkeys. He had also 7 sons and 3 daughters. He called the name of the first daughter Jemimah, and the name of the second Keziah, and the name of the third Keren-Happuch. And in all the land there were no women so beautiful as Job's daughters. And their father gave them an inheritance among their brothers. And after this, Job lived 140 years and saw his sons and his sons' sons 4 generations. And Job died an old man and full of days." And that just goes to show how powerful Job's story really is, and how God let all these things happen in his life that were awful things, and how he still chose to trust in God. Now, with some hiccups there, and of course he wasn't perfect, and he had the human desires of wondering why, but he still trusted in God through everything. And I feel like that's so powerful. And one thing that stood out was that God wasn't evil. He wasn't doing this to smite Job. He wasn't doing this to show evil towards Job, but he let these things happen to show Job that he was in control and that Job needed God. And Job wasn't in control of anything that happened, just like we aren't in control of anything that have happened in our lives. We aren't in control of a lot of things that keep on appearing. But when we stick to what God says is true and we look to him, the field is a whole lot greener. There's still going to be bouts of sadness and loss that we're going to go through, but realizing that God is in control of everything and letting go of that rain and saying that we can fix it is a whole lot better. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. I'll see you. Bye.